Sound to be having. And we are very, very fortunate to have Ms. Lucy Bremond here with us today. She's the Executive Director of the Emancipation Park Conservancy. We're going to learn all about this special place. And I want to thank you for joining us and tell us a little bit about what this special place means and why people should know about this place in relation to Juneteenth.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a unique opportunity and an exciting time. We're here live at the historic Emancipation Park here in Houston, Texas. The park was founded by 4 young men right out of slavery who pooled their resources together to purchase and send into the land so they could celebrate their freedom and property ownership. It's really important that we keep the historical perspective of the park. I am the Executive Director of the Emancipation Park Conservancy. We do programming and fundraising, so everything we do, we want to tell the story about the park. And Miss Jackie Bostic, who is the great-granddaughter of one of the founders, Reverend Jack Yates, I believe she's with us also here during this conversation. She always tells the story, and it's a story that was not documented because we didn't tell our history, but I have the unique opportunity to hear her. Every time I hear her tell the story, I learn something new because her story is the real story. It's oral history. She's a historian, and she tells the story firsthand about what she knows from her great-grandfather and her family about not just this park, but Juneteenth.
Wow, just an unbroken chain of history. Yeah, it's so exciting. Now, this facility is like one of the most beautiful. If you don't know about Houston, this is one of the most beautiful facilities in the whole city. But the park it goes back in time.
Yes, the park was founded in 1875, as I said, and the park was refurbished in 2017. Public-private partnerships and funding that allowed us to revitalize the park. And the park has a recreation center, which you could probably see right behind me. The original gym is now the culture center, and there's an aquatic. It's just like your regular park, if you will. But again, it's so unique because it's the first park in the oldest park in the state of Houston and one of the first parks in the state of Texas. And so again, it's just like any other park, but the history is so rich. We just want to maintain that history, keep telling the story, perpetuate the story, because it's important because it has a nice connotation to Juneteenth.
That's fantastic. So we're about to hear from Ms. Bostic here in a second. We just got some really great news yesterday, and that is, you want to tell us about that news?
So the really great news is the Senate did pass. It has to go to the House, I guess, so that they can approve Juneteenth celebration, Juneteenth, the day of Juneteenth, as a national holiday. So we're really excited about. We're super excited. I heard about yesterday when I got home, and it's so timely. It's so important. A lot of states, Texas was the first state that approved it. A lot of other states, I think there are over 40 states have approved it. This will make it approved throughout the United States, and it's really important, and we're so excited about it.
That is really cool. And this site and other sites around the Galveston-Houston region are going to be part of a trail, right?
Yes. So Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Senator Carter, which is unheard of, is bipartisan partnership that they pool their thoughts and their ideas together to present it to Congress so that they can get appropriation for Emancipation Trails. It's only the second trail in the United States, and it's going to start from Galveston to end up right here at Emancipation Park. There's a lot of history because, when and Ms. Jackie can share with you more about that. When people in Texas heard they were free, they didn't come up Interstate 45.
Right.
They came to waterways, and there's a lot of points between Galveston and Houston that we want to educate people about. And so that's what's happening. From what I can understand, they're doing appropriations for it now. But we're so grateful for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee for presenting that and rallying the troops and making sure that was approved.
That's such a beautiful story. I'm so excited about all these things that are happening. Just seemingly all of a sudden, we at TNC made it a celebration holiday, and I'm so excited about that. I needed to take a second and thank our crew today. You're going to see Felice Yarborough, one of our amazing partners from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, a little bit later. She's going to actually be fielding your questions. So if you could put it in the chat, Anna, who's also on our team today from Kansas, is going to be fielding those questions and relaying them to Felice. We also have Claros Morian, who is from the Texas chapter, providing IT, as well as Carly Thomas. So thank you very much to our team. And I think that this is a really great opportunity to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Bostic to tell us a little bit about Juneteenth, a little bit about this place. After we do that, we're going to go ahead and watch a video, and then we'll come back for our questions. So thank you so much for kicking us off the right way.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I'm so glad. Thank you for the opportunity. You got a lot of people around here driving the bus. So again, we're grateful. We know you put a lot into it. We want to make sure that we can continue this partnership, and we're grateful for everybody behind the scenes.
We are super excited about this partnership. All right. I'm going to go ahead and ask our mission control, Claros or Anna, to go ahead and bring Ms. Bostic onto the screen so she can talk a little bit about that experience and that history.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. As you've been told, I'm Jacqueline Bostic. And Juneteenth, as you are probably aware at this time, is the date that all slaves were freed in the United States, not just in Texas, but everywhere. And so that's why it's important that we have it as a holiday, have an understanding of what Juneteenth is really all about. The Emancipation Park, which was actually came into being legally in 1872 as a community place for the people who had been freed. They pooled their monies together, they bought it, and they used it as a place to celebrate Juneteenth and for other family and neighborhood and community recreation to come together as a facility. As you've already learned, it was redesigned and within the last few years, but it is actually the first park in our area and in the state of Texas. So it's a very special place. As you can see, the redesign was done by an architect by the name of Mr. Freelon. And they did a wonderful job with their redesigning of the park. The swimming pool area, everything was redone. The cultural center area, which actually came into being during the time of President Franklin Roosevelt, it was also redone, but it was not torn down and a new building put up. And the recreation center that you see, that's a totally new building. Perhaps there are some questions or some things you might like to ask me about the park. Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. We just went ahead and asked anyone in the chat if they have any questions for you. Now is the time to ask them. So we'll see if any of the questions come in for you, but thank you so much for sharing.
Ms. Bostic, I didn't catch exactly, it may have been in the beginning of the presentation and I was having a little bit of a hard time hearing, but what the, how exactly the TNC role, what the TNC role is here. And I'm based on the West Coast and we have been, in my community, we've celebrated Juneteenth for a long time and it's really, really exciting to see that broader recognition and importance federally now. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Did she just ask a question?
Yes, so we had a question about the connection between Emancipation Park and TNC. So I think Jaime might be a good person to fill in the blank there.
So if you guys can hear me, I am hoping to work with you guys in terms of thinking about some plants that might be good butterfly attractors that might give kids a real good connection, and even better connection because there's lots of nature here. So we're looking forward to talking about that moving forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're looking forward to the partnership. There's lots of opportunities where we can leverage resources and needs with this community. You notice the flowers are really beautiful. It is 10 acres. We probably feel sometimes that we're limited, but there's a lot of opportunity to bring things to the park that is not here now. I know that, and Miss Jackie knows that when we did the revitalization of the park in 2017, the goal is to do that, but to continue to do some things that make sure that people in the community can utilize the park, but make sure that it's a national landmark. So when people come to Houston, they come to Emancipation Park, we always want to have something here from there for them. And being able to help you guys leverage this partnership and tell the story about the partnership, tell the story about the unique park will allow people when they come to Houston, first thing they want to do is take me to Emancipation Park.
I love that. I love that. So, one of the things about our program here in Houston is that we work with beautiful communities like the Third Ward here to look at how nature can be used to enliven spaces, but also to help with things like climate resilience and other challenges, urban heat and other things. So I'm looking forward to working on this partnership and first listening and learning.
Yep.
And appreciating the history and the heritage. So I'm excited. So I think that now we're going to
see some questions.
Oh, you still have some questions?
I see just a few questions. One from Ms. Bostic. What personal meeting or memories do you or your family members have as you see and enjoy the special place, i.e. Emancipation Park?
Well, it's always been a place that you could go to and enjoy yourself as a community, because actually up until very recent years in the 60s, after integration came about, it was the only park that we as African Americans could actually go to in the city of Houston. Even though we were here first, it was still the only park that we could go to. So we could only go to other parks after the 1960s and integration came about. So for our community, it was a place where kids could go to learn to swim, to do all kinds of recreational activities and things. So it's always held a special place in all of our hearts in our community.
Jackie, there's another question. Are most visitors from the immediate area, or do other persons from other communities, specifically non-Black communities, also frequent the park?
Yes, well, the area where the park is located in, anyone, yes, can come to the park. It doesn't really matter what part of the city you live in. At this time, you can go to any park in the city. So people come from other areas as well as all around the area.
Perfect. And we had another question about the park, and are there on-site interpreters and signage that can help people enjoy the park?
I'll answer that, Miss Jackie, if you don't mind. So we created what we call a virtual tour. When COVID came, we no longer had the opportunity. When you have Juneteenth, we'd always have people to take you along and look at it. But if you go to our website, we have a virtual tour of the park. There are about 20 locations throughout the park that'll teach you a little bit about the historical perspectives of the park and everything that's going on in the park. We do have our website is amazing. We do have some programs that's going on now that COVID is being relieved. We'll introduce more and more of those activities that we've had. We have hip hop step aerobics here, a lot of different things. So that virtual tour, we were hoping to launch that last year. When we had COVID, we didn't. So you can download an app no matter where you are, and you can download that application. And it's a tour that'll take you throughout the park. And we welcome the opportunity for you to do that because, technology changed. That was last year. We want your feedback when you go through the tour to come back and tell us, what we can do different to make it even better. So even if you're in California and you can't get to Emancipation Park, go and do that tour so you can see the rich history of this park.
Let me ask you a follow-up question, because you guys have so many resources on your website. Can you give us both your website and tell us any hashtags or anything you're doing special around Juneteenth.
So last year we started Juneteenth virtually. This year we'll do a virtual Juneteenth again. We created a international campaign called We Are Juneteenth. And last year on the virtual platform, we had over 250,000 people learn about Juneteenth, learn about Emancipation Park. And so it was challenging because normally people would have been here for the park for the celebration. But this time throughout the world, we had people learning about the park, learning about Juneteenth. So you can go to our website, www.epconservancy.org, or go to our social media platforms at EP Conservancy. And while you're on our website, sign up for our monthly newsletter. You get a lot of information. This year, our Juneteenth celebration, we started June 1st. And we're saying we're going to end June 19th, but the reality is we're going to end June 20th because next year we'll be celebrating 150 years. Wow. And we're going to kick off 150 years immediately after we celebrate the 149th year of Juneteenth. And Ms. Jackie Bosick, who is with us today, is the chair for Juneteenth. And I tell you, Ms. Jackie had a lot of really good ideas that she helped us form up what that looked like. One of them was aired in all of our videos or on our social media platform. They're also on our YouTube channel. I'm so excited that she introduced the idea, the concept to do the role of the Black church in the Black community. And that was so special for her because two of the founders of this park are ministers. And so we did that. It is awesome. We had the president of the Ford Foundation. He's our honorary chair. He did a segment. And we also did a segment with our new police chief here in Houston, where we talked about social justice and reform. So if you get a chance, it was all recorded. You can go back to our website or our social media platforms and look at all of those. We invite you to look at them, share, like them, help us perpetuate the story about Juneteenth and the historic Emancipation Park.
That is so fantastic. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and make a transition. Claros, if you could show that video, and then we're going to come back and Felisa's going to field a few more questions for our special guests. So let's go ahead and roll that film and then we'll come back.
Hello and welcome. On behalf of Emancipation Park Conservancy, thank you for joining us and supporting us during our Emancipation Park's 149th annual Juneteenth celebration presented by Shell. I am Lucy Bremond, Executive Director of Emancipation Park Conservancy. Before we begin the webinar, I would like to share some information with you about the historic Emancipation Park, the Conservancy, and our We Are Juneteenth campaign. Emancipation Park was founded in 1872 by formerly enslaved African Americans led by Reverend Jack Yates, Richard Allen, Richard Brock, and Reverend Divell. These men, along with members of the 3rd and 4th Ward communities, gathered $800 to purchase 10 acres of land and to celebrate their freedom, which was June 19, 1865, 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. In 2013, the park underwent a $33.6 million renovation and later reopened in June 2017. Several public-private partnerships and the community worked to revitalize the green space and to allow more economic and sustainable opportunities. Emancipation Park Conservancy is a nonprofit 501(c) charitable corporation, and it was established in 2014 to restore, manage, and enhance Emancipation Park. Its purpose was to create an open space of environmental community excellence while continuing to preserve the park's integrity and historical roots. Its goal is to transform the historic Emancipation Park into one of the nation's premier landmarks, international destination through capital initiatives, operational improvements, strategic partnerships, programming, and special events. Emancipation Park Conservancy's We Are Juneteenth is a national campaign that celebrates Juneteenth and its connections to the African American experience, including history, tradition, heritage, and culture. We Are Juneteenth is a digital platform that provides an opportunity to communicate, share, acknowledge, and recognize the significant contributions African Americans have made to help shape American culture and society. The campaign is a collaborative movement that highlights the strides and impact African Americans are making toward their own economical, educational, and political advancement. You know, last year, We Are Juneteenth was a virtual experience and it reached over 250,000 people globally, with more than 25,000 people engaging in the Conservancy's content digitally. We are sure this year will be just as successful, and we cannot wait to celebrate 150 years of Emancipation Park with you in person next year. We have a great lineup of activities scheduled for the community to celebrate Juneteenth all month long. So make sure you visit our website at www.epconservancy.org or follow us on Facebook and Instagram at EP Conservancy for more information. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. Happy Juneteenth, and we hope you enjoy the webinar. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Felice Yarbo, and I am the Urban Park Ranger with the Houston Community Partnership and Engagement Programs. Long name, but we go by Houston Urban for short, and I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm so excited to be here today at Emancipation Park. I love Houston. I grew up in Houston. And so I'm going to be fielding a lot of your questions today to ask our two presenters. We already have one that I'm going to read to you. And well, one, we have just like a thank you for this presentation from everyone. So yes, and they again want to know, are visitors from the immediate area or from other communities, specifically non-Black communities, frequent the park?
So that's a very interesting question and a good question. I think that Ms. Jackie probably responded earlier, but we invite everybody to come to the park. And it's really interesting because we had a volunteer project here the other day. People in the community in Houston, everywhere, come to the park. There were so many non-African Americans that heard about it when we broadcast a volunteer. They came to see the park, and I'm sure that will happen as a result of this. So again, you'll see people here coming to the pool. You'll see people walking the park. Through the park, you'll see people walking their dogs. You'll see people riding their bicycles. There's one right over there now. And it doesn't matter. It's such a beautiful place, inviting place. And everybody that comes, when they leave, they talk about the park and its historical perspective. People come sometimes just to hear about the history. So not just in Houston, but when we had Juneteenth festivals here, there are a lot of people come back to Houston when they have conventions, which is right down the street. And they hear about the park because we do work with the Visitors Bureau here, and they come to the park. And the other thing that happens to people that lived here that moved away, they come back and want to visit the park, and they always share. And I take pictures of them, videos too. I learned to swim at this park. I used to play ball at this park. And we want to hear those stories. So every time somebody comes, there was a lady that had her 107th birthday here.
Wow.
And so she told me a lot of stories. I took pictures of her. And so we always want to capture those stories because we want to perpetuate the ideas about why this park was founded. You know, the park was founded because people loved being together. They wanted to tell the history that wasn't documented. So you get a lot of people coming here doing story time and recanting the privilege they had that was afforded to them by the people who founded this park. And so the reason why this park was started is what we want to continue to tell the story. And it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, come to the park. We have 75 kids here. Right now it's about 50 during the pandemic. And what we did when I first got here was to do a strategic plan, and we treated them just like adults. What do you want to do when you come to the park? What do you want to see the park? How you want to? So we got their voice, and we get the voice of the community, the voice of anybody that we can talk to that helps us to keep this park strong and prepared for the future.
Absolutely. And I know, and maybe you can tell us a little bit, an offshoot question, but this neighborhood has changed so much over time as well. And so with that, the park has also changed.
Yes, yes. The park changed probably during the time the neighborhood started changing. But we invite the people, they're our neighbors, we invite them to come to the park. And what's happening in Houston is no different than happening anywhere in the world, anywhere in Texas. So it's not a challenge for us. You know, we just want to make sure that we can do the kinds of things. I want to do the kinds of things I'm paid for. Programs, partnerships, and fundraising for the park. So if you come to the park, you love the park as much as I do, then help me keep it by helping me fundraise for the park.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, we have another question from Mr. Jaime.
Can you tell, can you let folks know, this is an incredibly culturally rich neighborhood, the Third Ward here in Houston. And a lot of folks might not know some of the notable people that have come out of this neighborhood or what the significance is for the African-American community. Can you give them a flavor for what the Third Ward is all about?
If you don't mind, can I ask Ms. Jackie to share to answer that question? Ms. Jackie, if you don't mind, maybe you can ask the question again, because again, Ms. Jackie has been here a lot longer than me, and I might tell you about Beyonce, but Ms. Jackie knows about all the other people in the community.
All right. I hope, Ms. Jackie, if you heard that question, let me go ahead and repeat it just in case you didn't hear it. We'd love to hear your perspective on this culturally rich neighborhood, the Third Ward here in Houston, and what it's like. Give people who might not be familiar with Houston or the Third Ward kind of a flavor of what this place is all about and some of the notable people that have come from this place.
Well, the Third Ward community has been a place where Houstonians could come together, and especially Houstonians who were African American years back. That was where a place they settled in, where they lived, where they had their churches, their schools, and other activities. However, as you can see today, the neighborhood has changed quite a bit. So therefore, there are other different ethnic groups, but many of the people that are perhaps that you may know of have lived in the Third Ward area. As someone said earlier, Beyonce grew up in the Third Ward area. You perhaps know about Beyonce. I started to say Barbara Jordan grew up in the Third Ward area, but she didn't. She grew up in the Fifth Ward area. But Congresswoman Lee, who is not a native Houstonian, but her husband is, and he grew up in the Third Ward area, and she's always lived in the Third Ward area since she's been here in the Houston area also. But it's an area where people came together, where families and children grew up together, where they had good schools, they had good recreation, and it's a place that they love. I spoke to someone today on another meeting, and they were having to move from where they are because they were increasing their family. And they wanted to come and buy a home in the Third Ward area, but they were not able to get a home because the homes were selling so fast. So, but they said, but I want to live in my neighborhood where I grew up. So it's a place where people are friendly, they know each other, they work together, and it's a wonderful place.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bostic, for sharing. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of folks from Houston. My mom is not famous, but she's from Third Ward. So I spent a lot of time here in the Third Ward community. I actually called my mom right before this program in my great-grandmother's house. If you take a right on Tuam, is 5 minutes on the road. So just a lot of history for Houstonians. A lot of things have changed, but a lot of things haven't, right?
Right, right.
So again, thanks, Ms. Bostic, for sharing. As you were sharing and just talking about people that are connected to Houston, could you tell us a little bit about following the death of George Floyd? What was the impact here at Emancipation Park and the Third community rippling through Houston, really?
Absolutely. We were devastated by the untimely senseless death of Floyd. He grew up in this community. He, from what I can understand, lived in the CUNY homes. He went to Jack Yates High School, the same high school that was named after Miss Bossett's great grandfather. And this was a place, I think, and it still maintains a place of healing. This is one of the first places in Texas, Orleans, Houston, that people protest without incident. And I think it's because people respect the park and understood the park. But there was a protest that started downtown Houston that ended up at the park. All of this happened with peaceful protests, but it gave people a voice that maybe didn't have a voice, that we could recognize, that everybody wanted to pull together. I think the other thing that's interesting about is, Floyd being in this neighborhood and being in this community, is it started conversations. It started conversations that people never had before. It showed some positive, in spite of his death was untimely, and some positive influences around people who wanted to come together and fix problems. At Jack Yates there is a mural that's in front of there. I think just last week there was a dedication at the school because a lot of the Houston Independent School District don't have football fields on their campuses. There was a dedication of the field. There is one of our board members, Ms. Stone, donated some land right across the street from the park to do. It's called a pocket park where people can go and learn about Floyd and just do some healing. So the biggest impact that I think that he has made in connection to this park is starting conversations, healthy conversations about the challenges and how we can fix the problems moving forward.
Very awesome. We don't have any other questions at the moment, but we definitely invite you all to continue to ask us some questions. We have a little bit more time left in the program. And to your point of just people being able to come here and protest, I think the history of this park really elevated the protests and the voices that were being shared during that time.
And I'd like to share a personal story with you. There was a group that came out to protest, and I was in my office. It rained profusely, so I decided to wait a little while before the rain slacked up. I've never seen anything like this in my life. They protest. When the protest was over, they picked up the trash, and it wasn't like a lot of trash, but the protest was going on all day. They left this place cleaner than they found it. Who does that? People that come to the park and recognize the significance of the park, but they honor the park. They honor what the park was built for, what it was all about. And I was just so appreciative that happened. But it just gave me goosebumps to know that people recognize the significance of this park in this historic Third Ward community. And again, without incident.
I love that. Yes, that's definitely like park rule, like leave no trace.
You park people know about that, right?
We do. Let's see, I'm checking to see we have questions. This is a great question. Can you describe how the park and community were impacted by Hurricane Harvey in 2017?
Okay, so I am going to ask Ms. Jackie to answer that because I have been the executive director of Emancipation Park since 2018, right? So I've been
just in time.
I've been here about 2.5 years. I have a remarkable staff and doing a fantastic job. But that's something that I don't know firsthand about. So Ms. Jackie, and I don't know if you can answer that or not, but that might be something Ms. Jackie might have more information about.
I will definitely pop it over to Miss Jackie. I will just say there's a lot of water that ended up here in Third Ward.
Okay.
I agree with you. More than anything, there was a lot of water everywhere in Houston, much more water than we've ever seen as it relates to a storm in Houston. But at that time, everybody was simply trying to help everybody else stay dry. And so the effect it had the same effect that it had on everything in Houston. And that's how to stay dry and let the water go down some and help each other out. That's one thing that I can say about Houston, and that is that Houstonians help other Houstonians always, no matter what. And I think one of the things that really came out well with the community when the untimely death of Mr. Floyd happened, it also helped to show the world how many people in the Third Ward community continue to live in the Third Ward community and know their neighbors. They know each other. They remember each other from childhood. And that really makes a difference when you build those kind of long-lasting relationships.
Thank you so much for sharing. Absolutely. People in Houston and people in Third Ward know people in Third Ward and know people in Houston. Everybody know everybody.
Right.
Would you tell us a little bit? So we talked about Hurricane Harvey, but tell us maybe about the impact of the winter storm that we most recently had and the crazy amount of heat that we're getting this summer. Your predictions for how that's going to impact the park and I'm sure visitation to the pool.
Yeah. So the winter storm, so that happened and we were right in the throes of doing a campaign that we call Black History Every Day. And again, it was going to be virtual. But one of the things that we did was work with the city government relations and some other organizations in Houston. And we did food distributions here at the park. I'm happy to say that, you know, it's something that
I think we've lost Miss Jackie, but we do have a question. If you don't mind, if I ask that question, that is in that Richard Allen that was connected with the birth of the park. Does the African Methodist Episcopal Church that was the first bishop? Do they have a direct connection to the park and the goals and impact?
Well, the Richard Allen that is a part of the park was actually a Baptist, a Baptist trustee at Antioch Missionary Baptist Church, which was one of the first churches that worked with getting the park started. So he was also an architect and he was a builder and he was also a state legislature after the freedom of former slaves. He came to Texas from Virginia.
Thank you. And it looks like what happened, their phone got overheated because it's so hot at the park where they are right now. So I apologize for that. There is one more question, if you don't mind us asking. What are some of your earliest memories from childhood at Emancipation Park for you, Ms.?
Well, I guess my earliest memories would be about going to the park, playing, enjoying the park, just having a good time of friendship and fellowship at the park, because it was a place that we could go and meet family and friends and have picnics and other types of activities. In terms of Juneteenth was always considered a great celebration for our community. And so it was a day when people came together as family and friends, and you had barbecue, you had watermelon, and you had red soda pop. You had to have those three things on Juneteenth.
Thank you so much for sharing. If anybody else has any questions for Ms. Jackie, this will be your opportunity. If you have any follow-up questions, we'll love to get them via email, and we can pass this on to Ms. Jackie. We thank you all for joining us today. And Ms. Jackie, thank you so much for being a part of this presentation. Are there any last words that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I would just first like to say thank you for inviting us to join you today and talk about Juneteenth. We hope that you have a wonderful Juneteenth celebration yourselves. And we look forward to the next time we get an opportunity to talk.
Yes, we hope that we get to visit the park someday. So thank you so much, everyone that has joined us. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email us. But thank you again, and we'll be sharing the recording soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.